opening up and engaging with the world as China plans for the future. Hello, I'm Elaine Reyes, and welcome to a CGTN America special program, The Vision Forward, a global dialogue on innovation, openness, and shared development. The 20th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China has held its fourth plenary session in Beijing. Participants adopted recommendations on formulating China's 15th five-year plan for economic and social development. This will cover the period from 2026 to 2030 and is considered critical for China's future. The framework includes further emphasis on areas such as high-quality development, science, technology, and innovation. There's also a focus on developing markets, green energy, and continued opening up. For a deeper understanding of what all of this means for China and the world, we hear now from several experts. We begin with Ding Yifan. He is a senior fellow with the Institute of Global Governance and Development at Renmin University of China. He explains the importance of China's next five-year plan and what it can achieve.
5 years is a critical moment for Chinese development. We will see whether we can reach this target because we set a target for the next 10 years. So next 5 years will be very important to evaluate Chinese ambitions of Chinese capacity to reach the target of 2035, because 2035 is a very, very important time set by Chinese leaders. So from 2025 to 2030 is a preliminary step of these 2035 targets. So that's very, very important. These 5 years, we will try to continue to promote our high quality economic development. The high quality economic development is based on the development of new productive forces, on our very resilient and complete supply chain. And then Chinese economy will be more resilient to the external shocks. And then for these purposes, China is building a more integrated economy with its autonomous supply chain and with its own technology and scientific basis. That's how Chinese government is planning its future. The major challenges and risks of Chinese future economic development is so-called external environment. External environment means, first of all, global economy. Current global economy is not that good. We are facing a sort of gloomy economy development in the global market. China have to rely more on other markets, especially new markets in global South countries. And then hopefully, since we have taken the initiative of Belt and Road development, so to some extent, China's economic cooperation is closer with global South countries, and China's trade relations has been strengthened with all these global South economies. That could alleviate a little bit the pressure of lack of exporting market for Chinese economy.
Next, we hear from a man whose engagement with China extends back to the 1970s. Robert Hormats is a former U.S. Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. He's also a former vice chairman of Kissinger Associates and a visiting lecturer at Yale University. He addresses the importance of China's global economic role and the challenge of navigating Chinese-U.S. relations.
I believe China now and in the future will continue to be a major part of the global economy, both in terms of the growth rates of China, but even more broadly in terms of China's technological preeminence in a number of key areas. that are important. I mean, clearly the US and China will be both competing for preeminence and will sort of share preeminence in certain areas, but in some, China may advance more rapidly, and some, the US may advance more rapidly. But I think the technological race between the two countries is becoming more and more competitive and will have a growing effect on the both countries and on the global economy as well. I think China has come a huge distance from when I first started going there, when I was Dr. Kissinger's economic advisor in the early 70s, to today. China's growth has been extraordinarily strong, and in the technological area, in the manufacturing area, and the infrastructure. So I think China is a key driving force in the global economy, and in particular in the Asian economic region, where China is certainly the major growth power, but also because China is becoming a very major trading power. China is the #1 trading partner for a very large number of countries, and therefore its impact on those countries will be important, and its impact on their technology will be important, because China is certainly working in a very direct and energetic way to become leaders in a number of the new technologies, and it will project those not only in China but elsewhere. And of course, the United States is going to be competitive in many of those areas too. So it's in many ways a two-country competition. Now the question is, can the two countries work together to deal with a variety of contentious issues that have to do with trade and have to do investments and have to do with critical minerals and have to do with a wide range of other things, where these two countries will be competitive, but they'll be also extremely important in terms of other countries in the global economy, particularly the global South, where China has been making a lot of progress in developing relationships, and those are obviously very important elements to the global economy.
What happened at the recent plenum in Beijing and expectations for what's ahead in China's next 5-year plan are being followed with interest across the globe. Jorge Heine is a former Chilean ambassador to China, and he's the author of The Non-Aligned World, Striking Out in an Era of Great Power Competition. He outlines how China's future economic progress and cooperation can benefit countries across Latin America.
It's important to understand that we are living in a time of great uncertainty and great unpredictability in the international environment, both political and economic. In that context, it seems to me that China provides a sense of continuity, a sense of predictability, a sense of stability that is very important. That's number one. Number two, obviously, China's GDP growth, which should be around 5% this year, is a very important driver of the world economy. According to some estimates over the past 5 years or so, China's growth has impacted about 30% of the world GDP. And the third point that I would like to emphasize is that when in many countries around the world, protection, particularly in the north, protectionism is running rampant. China keeps stressing the importance and the significance of free trade. So for those reasons, I think that China's economic impact on the rest of the world in these years will be very important. China has been, of course, for some time now, the #1 trading partner, as it is for South America as a whole. So what I'm trying to say is that the volume of trade between China and Latin America, which last year reached over $500 billion, up from 12 billion in 2000. So that's a 40-fold increase in 25 years, is very significant. And I would stress that there is significant complementarity between the Latin American, particularly South American economies and the Chinese economy. South America has many commodities, both mineral resources, we're talking copper, we're talking iron, and so on, and also agricultural resources. One of the things that has been stressed in the debates in this fourth plenum, from what I understand, is the whole issue of the green economy and the green transition, to a green economy and the energy transition. Now, in that sense, it seems to me that there is enormous potential for even greater collaboration between China and South America. Why? Between Chile and Peru, they have something like 30% of the world's copper reserves. There's also the lithium triangle encompassing Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina, which is about 60% of the world's lithium reserves. Now, both copper and lithium are critical for the green economy. So China, that has been leading the world with solar and with wind energy, and also now with e-mobility, and is setting up car factories of e-vehicles in Brazil, in Salvador, in Bahia, and also in Sao Paulo. That, it seems to me, is the way forward. China has free trade agreements with a number of countries in Latin America, Chile, Peru, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. We should see more of that. What I find very interesting is how the Belt and Road Initiative, which is China's key foreign policy project this century, has developed into a major infrastructure and connectivity program for the global south. And this has led to the building of ports. It has led to railway lines in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in Laos, in Argentina. And infrastructure is absolutely critical for development. China is contributing to overcoming this huge infrastructure deficit in Latin America, in Asia, and Africa. Much more needs to be done, of course, but China is moving in the right direction in that regard.
And for more perspective, we are joined now by a distinguished panel. With us from Beijing is Victor Gao. He is chair professor of Soochow University. Also with us from Johannesburg is Ibrahim Rasool. He is a former South African ambassador to the U.S. And with us from California is Gordon Holden. He is director of the China Institute and professor of political science at the University of Alberta. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us for our special program. Victor, I'd like to start with you. I'd love to get your thoughts on the plenum and the objectives and the roadmap being laid out for China's next five-year plan. How critical will this period be for China as it continues to advance and modernize?
Thank you very much for having me. I think the fourth plenum has been a very successful turning point in the Chinese development of a more rapid economic development at a very critical moment when the world is in great uncertainty. And I think the economic goals outlined by the fourth plenum, as well as the new five-year plan to be unleashed very soon, will dispel any doubt about the momentum of the Chinese economic development, because the plenum has declared very clearly that a lot of increase in the future economic development will be driven by what we call new qualitative productivity, meaning we want to really generate lots of economic increases by focusing on scientific and technological breakthroughs. And I think China has reached a point where the pipeline of major economic innovation will be shown to the world. And that will be the future of the Chinese economic development. And China will be able to manage all the uncertainties, both at home as well as abroad, and continue onto the path of, relatively speaking, very rapid economic development, generating more productivity through scientific and technological breakthroughs in the coming 5 years.
Ibrahim, we know that China's economic planning for the coming years will have a major impact, not just in China, but also around the world, affecting the global economy. I'd also like to get your thoughts on the plenum the next 5 years. How can countries in Africa, for example, and across the developing world benefit from China's continued economic modernization?
No, thank you very much. I think that taking what Victor says as important, I do think that China's recognition that it is in a competition with the United States, but that it will not provoke a decoupling from the United States, but seek a dialogue and find the opportunities within it, I think is an acknowledgement that China is slowly but surely positioning itself for leadership over the global South, which includes Africa, to say, let's see how we can sit out this trade war. Let's prepare for 5 years from now, and let's all move together. And therefore, when Victor says that China is positioning itself as a technological superpower to increase investment in the technology sectors, China unashamedly says it wants to be dominant in the artificial intelligence space. But where China differs, say, for example, from the United States, China does not want a regulation-free technological and AI space. What China wants are regulations that can help, and this will be helpful to the global South and to Africa, that can help introduce this technology, this AI into Africa, make it useful for the new fourth industrial revolution that is opening up in Africa, but do so with ethical guardrails and regulatory frameworks so that Africa's, for example, its critical minerals are not just subject to extraction, but is subject, for example, for beneficiation. And therefore, I want to read the plenum that China has just completed together with the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement, in which China, with its partners, have said trade, critical minerals, and energy are going to be absolutely critical for this new future. And those are the three kind of things that I think Africa particularly will be looking at, partnerships with China, and that this global South will need Chinese leadership and Chinese protection from, especially given that the United States has all but killed the African Growth and Opportunities Act, has all but involved Africa and the global South in this trade war by imposing tariffs on African countries. So I think this plenum has been, as Victor says, a breakthrough and a turning point in the way in which China is positioning itself very discreetly, but very definitely in the geopolitics of the world.
Gordon, I'd like to bring you in. You know, China has made a massive contribution to the global economy in the last several years. What are your thoughts on this new 15th five-year plan? As there are plans for more modernization, we've been hearing about technological advancements. How critical is China's economic success to the health of the overall global economy?
Well, thank you very much, Elaine. Certainly, China's growth now and for several years actually has provided the greatest single portion of growth in the global GDP. And given the predictions and the goals set out, roughly a 5% growth rate going forward, that would continue to be the case, given that's well above the growth in GDP of other large economies. It's interesting as well, as other speakers have noted that there's not a direct response to U.S. policies articulated in the comments towards the five-year plan. Beneath the surface is clearly there. A re-emphasis on technological developments, high-tech development, doubling down, but also with reference to the need for independence in high-tech. In other words, being able to resist policies that might come from the United States or elsewhere. There's also a welcome reference to inward-bound investment. China wants to maintain an open door and welcomes involvement with international corporations and countries that are willing to send capital to China. As well, there's a clear reference to desirability of maintaining the global trading system, which again is, in my opinion, a response to the tariff-based approach to the United States. So without directly countering U.S. policies, there is a clear reference to avoiding confrontation, but in effect assuming over the next 5 years an increasing role of leadership on global economic issues.
Victor, you touched on this a moment ago, and I'd like to get you to elaborate if you can. Making advances in areas like high quality development, science, technology, innovation emphasized at the conclusion of the plenum. What sort of progress do you expect from China as it continues to modernize? Can we expect to see more scientific and technological self-reliance?
Well, I would say the next 5-year period will be a very crucial period because as of now, the Chinese economy is already the largest in the world if we use purchasing power parity. China is at about 135% that of the United States if we use purchasing power parity. Now, in terms of the official exchange rate, China is next only to the United States. But if you look at the substance, for example, manufacturing capabilities, output, and the generation of power and production of automobiles, production of electric vehicles, you name it, you can look across the whole range of major items of production. China is definitely number one. That means in the next coming 5-year period, I think in terms of the size of the Chinese economy, if we use official exchange rate, China may actually achieve parity with that of the United States, especially when the United States is faced with a lot of uncertainties in terms of the rates of its federal funding, for example, as well as many uncertainties in its equity market, debt market, overall economic situation, etc. So I think the coming 5 years will be of crucial importance because at the end of the coming 5-year period, China may be really generally regarded as the largest economy, not only by using purchasing power parity, but also very much by using official exchange rate. Now, the additional economic output will be generated mainly by China's focus on economic and technological scientific excellence, meaning China will need to invest more in AI in particular to make sure that China is not only not lagging behind any other country, but will be leading the world in this particular regard. China is determined to push the EV revolution really to the hilt. Now China produces about 33 million vehicles a year. China wants to see that up to 100% of all the vehicles to be produced in China will be electric vehicle, because this will really knock out the demand for crude oil, almost half of the total demand. And this will be China's contribution to fighting off the effect of the climate change. So the coming 5 years will be the kind of make it or break it period for the Chinese economic excellence. And I believe by 2030 or so, China will be the leading economy in the world, without any doubt for anyone in the world to see.
Ibrahim, we know that AI is at the top of everyone's conversations, and we know that China has become a leader in the AI space. As China progresses in both AI and other tech areas, what sort of impact will that have across the global South and beyond?
So I think that the global South is understanding its own power in relation to China by holding the critical minerals that enables the technological revolution and that enables the ubiquity of artificial intelligence. And so with China already having cornered 90%, 80 to 90% of the processing of critical minerals and rare earth elements, I think that with the application of tariffs to the United States, we're going to find a cooperation with China that is going to be very important, whether it is in the global South, having their critical minerals processed by China, and then if the United States wants to buy it, they should do that, or by China cooperating with the global South in beneficiating and processing those critical minerals at source. So I think that there is a dovetailing, for example, between the kind of ideas that the global South is bringing into the G20, which is led by South Africa in this year, 2025, which has been kind of snubbed to some extent by the United States of America. I think that in the absence of a strong US delegation in the G20, I think there's a gravitation towards China to bring solutions in the face of the trade war between China and the US, in which the global south would be the kind of collateral damage.
Well, that brings me to Gordon and my next question. The global economy, as we know, has been experiencing issues like protectionism and tariffs. We sort of touched on this at the beginning of our conversation, and that could be a factor here in the future, in the coming years. China acknowledges what it is referred to as a complex international landscape and mounting challenges. So as we look at the headwinds and the risks involved, how much of a challenge could this continue to be for the global economy?
Thank you, Elaine. I thought actually in reading and rereading some of the documents coming out of the fourth plenum, clear references to what they call the high winds, choppy waters, and even dangerous storms. So I think there is a recognition in the documents, in the comments from the fourth plenum, that there are uncertainties. Those uncertainties, as you know, include high tariffs. They include rivalry, particularly in the high-tech sector with the United States. And again, this emphasis on high-tech independence on the part of China. China has a great advantage by its size and its internal strengths that can generate growth internally. But it will be and is affected by what's happening in the rest of the world. So I think there is a cautious realism in the documents that in these uncertain times, China also will be affected and buffeted by those changes. And I think the efforts outlined and what we will see coming in the 15th five-year plan is an effort to, in effect, safeguard the Chinese economy and the economy of the people and affect the livelihoods against changes and challenges from the outside.
I'd like to go inside China now. And Victor, the communique also called for development of the domestic market and the need to boost consumption. How much or how important will that be for China in the coming years?
I think China also needs to go into a new mode, for example, and the government is trying new methods. For example, in more recent years, the Chinese government has been providing subsidy for families to use new electric appliances like refrigerators, washing machines, dishwashers, etc. if they buy new to replace the old items. And I think this will help to speed up the consumption, for example. Traditionally, the Chinese families tend to save a lot. They do not want to throw the old used up items away. They continue to use them. And maybe we need to have a new mentality, buying more frequently and buying new items to phase out the old items. I think it takes time, but if the society is really going to change a lot of the old Chinese family habits, saving money rather than spending money in anticipation of major unexpected emergencies or exigencies, for example, then I think we will spend more and we will worry less about whatever overhangs which may come beyond the horizon.
And we will leave it there. Victor Gao, thank you so much for joining us. Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool, we appreciate your time, as well as Mr. Gordon Holden. Thank you all for joining us. This has been a great discussion. We hope you have enjoyed this CGTN America special, The Vision Forward. Thanks so much for watching.